Hey, everybody. It's Jason. I know you've heard my voice many times in the podcast, and I'm here to tell you about something very interesting coming up. I want to let you know about an incredible opportunity for you to get free tips and strategies to build and monetize your personal brand. My good friend Rory Vaden is a New York Times bestselling author and Hall of Fame speaker, and he and his wife founded a company called Brand Builders Group. And they have put together a huge online summit where they're interviewing some of the most influential personal brands in the world on their never before shared secrets of how they became who they are today. So who's speaking at the summit? We've got Lewis Howes, got Michael Hyatt, Dennis Rodman, Kevin Harrington, Jay Baer, Donald Miller, and more. This is a rare opportunity for you to hear the stories about how they became New York Times bestselling authors, how they built high-paid keynote speaking careers, how they have grown massive online followings, and exactly what they have done to create large, multi-seven-figure businesses. If you're someone who is looking to create any type of influence, you have to check this out. It's totally free, and you're going to be learning from the masters who've actually done this. So I want you to encourage you to head over to the show notes today. And in the show notes, I'm going to put a link to this summit. Again, completely free. Take a look at it. I feel super confident you will find it valuable. And now, enjoy the episode. My guest on the show today is Laurie Gilbertson. Laurie is the founder and CEO of Tribeca Blue Consulting, a communications training and coaching firm that helps its clients more powerfully connect with their audience and customers. Prior to Tribeca Blue, Laurie was a prosecutor with the district attorney's office in my home city, now, of New York City, and also a litigation training specialist with the Practicing Law Institute, the top legal education organization in the country, and a television legal analyst. Perhaps most importantly, from one parent to another, Laurie is the mother of 3 energetic children, and I'm pretty sure we're going to hear about this today. Welcome to the show, Laurie. How are you today?
Thanks so much, Jason. So happy to be here. Doing just fine. How about you?
I'm doing well. It's
awesome.
It's the end of 2021. Can you believe it?
I cannot believe it. I mean, it feels like this year both felt like 10 years and one day. Right? It felt like both.
It's really insane.
It is. It is.
I'm tired. I don't know about you, and we're not going to spend much time talking about it, so we'll just get the niceties out of the way now. I'm really tired of talking about pandemics and virtual meetings and kids in schools and everything. So we're actually not going to talk about that today.
That
unless
good.
You want to. We're going to talk all about you, Laurie, all about you. So
I'm ready.
Go ahead.
I'm ready.
All right. So I got first question for you. You know it's coming here. What is something you nerd out about, Laurie?
I am a total and complete book nerd. When I was young, I used to think, this was my fantasy when I was about 8 or 9 years old, of getting locked in the library so I could sleep overnight and have all the books to myself. So I don't know, do I get kicked off the podcast now for not being cool?
Oh, oh my gosh, this answer I did an interview last week and somebody had asked does that make me cool? First of all, nerds are cool now.
Totally.
Nerds are cool. Second
of all, that's what I tell my kids.
Oh man, Laurie, I've had guests say things like running shoes, zombie video games, board games, if I went on here and told you all what I nerd out about, you'd be like, that's kind of nerdy, but that's the whole point of the question is no. Reading, I love books, and I have a 5-year-old who's learning to read right now, so I really appreciate this.
Oh, yeah. Books are, I think, just the basis of so many amazing things in the world. And when I started, I was a voracious reader as a kid. I just wanted to learn and read everything under the sun. And then as I got older, I narrowed in a little bit. And so I'd go down different, kind of rabbit holes. Like for a while, it was debut novels. I nerded out completely on the first books of authors because I felt like they were pouring their heart and their soul into those first books. And there was just something so just passionate and energetic and wonderful about reading them. So I just kind of totally nerded out on that and probably had a list a page or two long of all the first novels I started reading. So there's your nerding out.
Yeah, well, and I know we'll probably get into a little bit of your career history later, but you were probably well suited for law school then, is my guess. I was would not have been well suited for law school. I like to read things that I want to read.
Yeah.
Meaning that if it's a thing that I don't find interesting, it's just not going to happen any way that I'm going to retain anything. So
No, I totally get that. I do feel the same way. I mean, some things in law school, like you just had to read them, but these days I am able to be much more selective.
Yeah. So, I mean, this brings up the next natural question for all of us here.
Yeah.
Do you have any book recommendations for us? Anything you've read recently that you enjoyed?
Well, I saw a movie recently that was actually pretty kind of disturbing and depressing, yet hopeful. All at the same time, it was called Beautiful Boy. And it was actually,
I've seen it.
Have you seen it?
Yes.
And so I kind of went down the rabbit hole, and for people listening who don't know it, it's about a father and a son, and the son's struggle with addiction. And I kind of went down the rabbit hole afterwards and read both the father's memoir about it and the son's memoir about it. And I generally don't read a lot of nonfiction, but just found them absolutely gripping. So I highly recommend those.
Is that the Beautiful Boy is the name of the film, which I did see. I haven't read the books. Is the title of the film from one of the memoirs?
Yes, the father's memoir. David Sheff, I think, is the author, and the title of his book is Beautiful Boy.
Great.
And then his son's memoir is Nick Sheff, and the title of his book was Tweak, which referred to kind of how he felt when he was on meth. So it was pretty gripping. And I think for my next one, I'm going to have to go happy and light.
Yes. So, we call those beach reads.
Totally.
That's great. Thank you for the book recommendation.
Yeah.
And yes, nerd out about books. That is a good nerdy thing, in my humble opinion.
Me too.
So Laurie, what's something that is going to be inside of your comfort zone that's likely going to be outside of somebody else's?
Well, here's something that I have noticed about myself over the years. I tend to like and thrive on crisis, which most people don't like. When something kind of goes crazy and everything goes nuts, and it can be kind of either a dangerous or a stressful situation, there is something about that turns on in me the opposite response. And I just get calm, like the eye of the storm. It's a very strange trait to have. It really is. But it's done me well in some situations. Yeah.
That's just thinking about, again, at the beginning when I introduced you, you were a prosecutor in New York City. So if anybody's ever watched any television show or movie about prosecution in New York City, I'm sure it's not completely accurate all the time, but you deal with a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that comes through New York City. And then what you do now is like then we're going to talk about like the firm and communications and all these things. Like the things you do, and what I'm hearing is your unique gift. You've picked career choices that really you get to lean into that, because you kind of operate inside of chaos most of the time. It sounds like in some way, shape, or form. Totally true.
And I can't say and take credit for that being conscious in any way.
Sure.
I think that we tend to gravitate towards things that we're good at or that feel comfortable. And I think that is, as I've gotten older and kind of gotten some, perspective on things, that is a theme that runs through a lot of my career, and even, personal life. When my kids were little, my first son, when he was about 9 months old, I was out at the park on Hudson River Park. You probably know, in New York City.
Oh, yes.
Right
Sure.
along the water. It was during my maternity leave, and I was there with some friends, and we had, all the little kids there, and one of the little kids started choking. 9 months old, at my friend's son. And I just kind of took him, hit him on the back, and he was fine without even thinking about it. And, I was like, wow, I'm so glad that came in handy, that kind of just that thinking. I think in another life, maybe I would have been like an emergency room physician or like something like that, something that is that kind of chaos all the time. But, it's, I think we do gravitate towards that. And so I guess I have in some way.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah. That's quite a unique trait. Do you get bored easily?
Extremely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's the not the I won't call it the downside. That's likely the other side of that coin. Cause full disclosure, Laurie and I don't know each other, but we are already finding a lot of commonalities. I love chaos. Like if things are not going well, I think it's an ego thing for me of how can I figure out how to get it working better. My wife has a saying, she'll say like only boring people get bored, which I kind of don't agree with. But also, like, I think what I'm hearing, Laurie, is you like thrive in change. And it's what's interesting for you is a lack of stability because you have a way to either make it more stable or to make it work anyway. And I'm actually built quite similarly, which I think is a bit of a rare trait in people.
I think it is. And it is that, that just getting kind of restless and really needing to, I think there's a lot of problem solving. I don't know if you find this too, Jason, a lot of problem solving in right there. There's a situation and can you fix it? Can you make it better? Can you put those pieces together? And it sounds like, the thing that snaps into my head in that kind of situation is the same thing that snaps kind of into your head. The same thing. Yeah. The restlessness though, I don't know what you do to counter it. Like I do get bored super easily, really do. And, I think with the jobs I've had, I have tended to stay in positions for a very long time, but they needed to be positions that allowed for change, that allowed for being able to do different things and try different things and have some freedom and flexibility, to learn and to change and transition within the same job.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And you also have 3 children, so that I'm guessing that's never boring. For good and for bad.
I got to say, I don't just have 3 children. I have 3 teenagers. So
there's no boredom.
Right,
I mean,
there is no boredom in this household. And, we have a cat and we just adopted a puppy that we were fostering because we didn't have enough chaos. We had to add more.
I love it. Well, so Laurie, I just have to say this to you, which is hilarious. We have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old that I talk a lot about on the show. And I've mentioned this in a few other episodes. Our son was born, he's a pandemic baby. He was born in October of 2020. And then because we're literally insane, we got an 8-week-old golden retriever puppy in February of 2021.
Oh, you got a pandemic puppy.
Pandemic puppy. And she just got her first heat. She has her first heat right now. So we have a 5-year-old, a 1-year-old who's fully walking and ready to kill himself. And then we have a dog who's in her first heat. So our home is also, there's no boredom going on at home, which is, I like it, but sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I was a little more bored at home.
Sometimes you just yearn for like a little bit of peace.
Yeah, a little bit of peace.
Just a little bit. And then we can go back to the chaos, but just like a little bit of quiet.
Exactly. So let's take a look at the other side of this question, Laurie, and like talk about something that is outside of your comfort zone that is going to be inside of somebody else's. What comes to mind for you?
Okay. The outdoors. All right. I live in Colorado. I'm a transplanted New Yorker. I live here in Denver with my family. There's a Simpsons episode, if anyone watches The Simpsons, where, Bart the son asks Marge, his mom, to help him make a tree house. And then he looks at her and he says, "Oh no, you can't help me. You're an indoor grown-up." That's what my kids call me. I am the indoor grown-up. And yet we live in Colorado. So, people here, I have gotten into it, but people here, they love climbing mountains. They love camping. They love all of this. And I am the, Manhattan, New York City apartment dweller who's like, what do you mean camping? What? I'm going to sleep on the ground? What? But, I'm learning, I'm exploring, I'm learning the beauty, but for most people, that's what they move here for.
Oh God.
Yeah, totally.
It's like a badge of honor. You're like, I'm in Colorado and I just spent a week, blah, 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 some like crazy thing. Most people that I know that live in Colorado, they specifically live there because of the outdoors.
Oh yeah. They're like, let me climb a 14er before 8 a.m., and then I'll go to work. Or let me take off, early on Friday morning because I'm going to go ski, backcountry heli skiing for 3 hours or 4 hours, or let me heli ski to a cabin, and then nobody else can find us, but we have our own mountain. So that is what people here do. So I'm easing into that over the years, and I got to say, I got a 16-year-old who thrives in the outdoors. I have a husband who, we cannot go to Rocky Mountain National Park as much as he would like to. And that's pretty much every weekend. So I'm in it,
You're getting
like it
there.
or not, but I'm
You're
not,
getting there.
it's not my comfort zone. Not at all.
What you're describing to me reminds me of a saying that my wife says that I find very funny, because I like camping, and she'll be like, why would I camp when I have a perfectly good bed?
I think I need to meet your wife. I think we have a lot in common here.
I think there's a lot in common. She likes the outdoors, but her idea, like, she could care less about camping. Like, why would I sleep on the ground in a tent when I can sleep? She would want to go glamping. And I am all about, like, throw a little air mattress. Let's get out there. Let's do this thing. I'll take the dog, take the kid. She's like, why? I have enough. I have a 1-year-old. Like, why would I be any more torture? Because she's the one who really wants more peace in her life. So.
Right. Oh, I bet.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So you heard it here first, folks. There is somebody who lives in Colorado who does not really enjoy the outdoors. Do not let the Colorado tourism board hear about this. You might get kicked out of the state.
I feel like because we have adopted a puppy, we're going to be allowed to stay.
You're going to be allowed to stay.
Yeah.
That was like the ticket sale. Like, these people, they can fit in. That's right. Funny.
Totally. You got to have one here.
Yeah. So Laurie, since you train people on speaking and you've done, my guess is thousands of hours of presentations in the courtroom, training on TV, all the things you've been doing training, this is probably an easy question for you to think about. And I'm really curious what your answer would be. So if I was to be able to give you 5 minutes, only 5 minutes, it's your mini TED Talk, and you get 5 minutes to speak to all of us in the world on whatever you want. So you can talk to us about anything you want for 5 minutes. What is it that you would give your speech on, and what would be your call to action to us as the audience?
You may be surprised by this. We'll see. I truly believe that we need a lot more empathy and kindness in the world. Mm-hmm. And that it's empathy and kindness that really lead to connection. And I'm not talking about being a pushover, or not being assertive or being able to speak up, but I'm talking about just really being able to kind of step outside yourself to look at things from someone else's perspective and to then take some action. I think that people these days, and probably for a while, have just no idea of the incredible impact that being empathetic and being kind can have on just one person, and what that ripple effect can be in the world, and how that can lead just incrementally to so many amazing things. And I've seen that, I see that quite a bit with my teenagers, with the way that social media is for them these days, with the way that communication has changed, kind of with this generation coming up. And I think that empathy and kindness can solve so many of a lot of the things that ail the world. To not be too out there, but that really ail the world, and it starts on that personal level. Yeah. And so, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Laurie.
I was going to say my call to action would really be to just start embracing that it is not a sign of weakness. I think it is just one of the strongest things that people overall and that leaders can do, is to act and lead with empathy and kindness.
Yeah, that's awesome. I agree with you. And the two things I heard in there that I took, especially for myself, is the idea of, it's an overused phrase, but mindfulness. So just because you have a reaction to something doesn't mean you need to take an action on it immediately, and give yourself or the person you're with, time to process, think, say, whatever it is. And the second thing is, it's so funny because most people you talk to understand everything you just said, and most people don't practice it, in my opinion. Yeah. It's a thing. It's like a thing that, at least for me, and I'm putting myself in that as well, I think intellectually most of us understand, like, oh, more of this and more of this would equal a better world. But and this is my opinion, I think biologically, we're just not really wired that way, because we're wired for ourselves and our survival and like our family. Yeah. And so it's like, it's actually going against, in a way, it's something that takes work and practice, because it's not instinctual for us. Most of us, in my opinion.
Yeah, I that's an interesting point. I tend to agree with you on that. It is like, I don't know if you meditate. It sounds like maybe you do, or practice. Yeah, me too. Started during the pandemic to try to survive in this chaotic household. Yeah. And having that kind of mindful moment that you're talking about, where there's, and it's a bit of time in between an event and your reaction to it, and just taking that pause. I think that's where the empathy can come in, but it is counterintuitive. You do have to push yourself to do it until it becomes, a little more regular. And it's tough. It is tough when people are busy, people are going through a lot. They have their own lives. They're working hard. They're with their families. It's very easy to just be very kind of insular and focused on what's going on in your life. But, taking that moment and just trying to learn some different perspectives is not just good for the people who you kind of have the reaction to. That's probably a much better reaction than if you didn't take that moment, but it's also good for you. It's also a totally different way of looking at the world. Yeah.
I love that, Laurie. That's a good place to take a really brief pause for a commercial break, and we'll be right back after this.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
Okay, Laurie.
All right.
We're back. Are you still with us? I
am still here.
Did you practice any empathy over the commercial break?
I practiced a little mindfulness, a few deep
a little
breaths.
Mindfulness.
Yep.
You're like some four-corner breathing.
Exactly. What questions are coming next?
Yeah, well, it's gonna be. So the first part of the show is just the warm up. The second part is when the grilling and the inquisition and all the scary questions come.
Okay.
So are you ready?
I don't know.
Are you ready?
I don't know. I think so.
I definitely have a context about attorneys being really, really well prepared to do these sort of things, no matter what comes at them. Maybe I don't know. That's just my context around being an attorney. But
yes.
So what would you like us to know about you?
I think, something about me that is interesting is that I have gone from someone who is incredibly risk averse and not too excited about change to someone who's starting to kind of embrace that in life. And that's kind of been something in my career. It's been something in my family. I think it is shown the most in the fact that we just picked up and moved from New York to Denver 5 years ago.
Were you in Manhattan?
We're in Manhattan, not at the time that we moved. We've been living downtown, and had moved once, I had 3 kids under the age of 2. And once they started getting older, I think our apartment started literally bursting at the seams.
That sounds about right.
Right.
I have to ask you, Laurie, where did you live downtown?
I lived at a building called 71 Broadway. And it was right next door to Trinity Church.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah. And Alexander Hamilton is buried in the cemetery there. Yep. Which our window overlooked his grave. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. My wife and I, we lived at 111 Worth Street in 2008 and 2000, actually end of 2008 through the beginning of 2010. So right across from 26 Federal Plaza.
Yep. I know it well. It's It's different down there. Like it's really changed, the neighborhood, and became so family friendly and much more, a little less business oriented and a little more kind of community and I think family oriented. And when I was living down there, my son went to daycare at the Trinity Church daycare, which was right across the street from the church.
That's so cool.
It was so cool. And over Halloween, they used to have the Halloween party in the cemetery at Trinity Church.
That's amazing.
So
that's so cool.
Is that wild?
That's wild.
Pictures of my son as a baby, dressed up in his, little puppy costume with his little friends, sitting on graves. It's a little weird, but it was totally cool.
Yeah. That's a cool cemetery.
It is. It's really beautiful. Really is. So that's where we're in New York City. And then we moved out to a house out in the suburbs for a few years before moving out to Denver.
Got it.
And, you ask about me and I had a very kind of distinct view of myself. I grew up in Maryland. I went to school in New York. I thought that I was going to be, career prosecutor in New York City. That was it forever. And, as I did the work, I realized as I kind of came up on about 10 years in the office that I was ready for a change. And that was kind of mind bending to me because I never thought I'd do anything else.
Yeah.
And so, slowly I started to explore other things and started to kind of change the mindset of what I had thought kind of my life and career was going to be like. And, transition is not always easy. And change is not always easy. Even if you're someone who likes it and gets bored easily, there's a contradiction there. Right? You need the change, but it's also hard. So I had to kind of work through that and try something different and really try to figure that out and try to kind of embrace the change. And then as I, became a mom and had, I had twins. I had one son and then 18 months later had twins in New York City in the apartment that eventually burst at its seams. Kind of had to reevaluate, what was that kind of alignment and balance going to be like? And what was life going to look like for that time? And I think we just have different phases of our lives, different phases of life, different phases of career, different phases of personal life, and just learning to be open to that, I think has been the biggest thing that I've learned about myself over the years. And I am, super thankful that, when the opportunity came to move to Denver, somewhere I had never been, my husband had a job opportunity and he had this opportunity and we kind of looked at each other and it probably took us about 10 minutes to be like, awesome, let's do it.
Yeah.
So, embrace the adventure and the change. And that's something I learned about myself that I needed to do.
Yeah. I always laugh about people that move from New York City or move from New York State. We live in Brooklyn. Normally we're currently a little bit outside of it, but still New York State. People that go somewhere else and then they go, and it was really awesome. And then we figured out that our state income taxes were going to go down by quite a bit depending on where we're going. And then they're like, wow, this really makes a lot of sense financially too.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
like
especially
the percentage. Oh my gosh.
You learn, I think, as a New Yorker to compartmentalize all these things about New York that you have to just deal with to be able to continue to live there, right? You can't think about it. It's crazy.
No.
Right.
Yeah. Like inflation. Oh, the subway's gone up like 400% since I've lived here for 10 years. And oh, wait, I'm paying 3.5% city tax plus the highest income tax rate in the country. It's great. Yeah. Like you have to think about it. But then when you're like, I don't know how it is for you, but for me, when I go to a Broadway show and then walk out and go have a drink, I'm like, this is why it's worth the extra money. Or hey, I'm at Yankee Stadium, or oh, I'm in Central Park in the first snowfall of the year, and you're like, oh, this is why. This is why. At least that's how it is for me and my wife.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think, people say, when this question, what's your happy place? What do you think of maybe when you're meditating or when you want to be calm or you just think of your happiest place in the world? And, for me, that's New York City at night. walking on the street.
So good.
Yeah, downtown, or even don't love Times Square, but I love the shows and all of that.
Yeah.
But, anywhere with the lights and the activity and just the kind of constant hum. And it just, at least for me, always made me feel like I was in the center of the universe and had access to all these amazing things. And even if, I was a poor prosecutor and I couldn't go out and do everything I wanted to do, or even if I was, at home with 3 kids and I couldn't, be out at all the fancy restaurants I wanted to go to, there was always something else, there was always an awesome opportunity. And that is just what makes all those other things you talk about, it makes it palatable because the returns are so amazing.
Yeah. It's so experiential. Do you like David Sedaris? Do you know who David Sedaris is?
I do know who he is. I don't know a whole lot about him, but I do like him.
Well, before we move on here, I just wanted to bring this up. So I brought this up a couple times on this show. The genesis of this show partially is modeled off of Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert because, and I heard him say this on a best of episode this year, Dax said to Carmelo Anthony, who's an NBA basketball player, that the reason that he likes doing his show is because he finds the things that people do for a living to be the most boring part about them, which is an interesting thing to say to a future NBA Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I don't find it to be the most boring thing, but I think there's so many other interesting things about all of my guests and everybody. But I bring this up because David Sedaris was on Dax's show earlier. He walks 5 miles a night, usually at midnight, and he lives on the Upper East Side. He was talking about it. And he's like, I walk at least 5 miles almost every night, no matter where I am. And I usually do it late at night because, he's a writer and a humorist and brilliant comedian. And it was just so interesting. Like, that's his process. And Dax is like, do you do that by yourself? He's like, yeah, usually by myself. And I've had a few run-ins, but it's the Upper East Side. But he's like, for him, that is a very sourcing thing, is to walk the city at night. So I'm the same way. I'm a night owl. I love walking in New York City at night. It's the best.
It is. It is like nowhere on earth. Who Oliver Sacks, who is was a neurologist and a writer. There was a book recently about his companion who had complete insomnia and used to walk the city at night, and then wrote a whole book about all of the things that he would see. And there was, lots of material to mine for that.
I can imagine.
And I just wanted to touch on one thing you said about, talking about your job being the least interesting part about people. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
One of the biggest differences I noticed moving from New York to Denver was that nobody here asks you what you do.
Oh, that sounds so refreshing.
Like, I have friends that I met people and it was probably, weeks or months before I even knew what their job was.
That's so interesting.
Because there's so much other stuff to talk about and to do and to explore. And it's just not top of mind here. It's not
that's good. I just had this image of, the image of what it's like to be a dog owner and go to a dog park in New York, where you get to know the other dogs and you like the people, but you don't know their name, but you know their dogs' names. Have you had this experience in Colorado where you're like, oh, there's Benji and there's Spot and there's what, and then you're like, hey, how you doing? And you like have a conversation with somebody and you never ask them anything about themselves because you're just talking about your dogs the whole time.
It's the dog thing. Our dog he can't get to the dog park yet, but soon. But it's because he's only a few months old. But
he needs the shots. He needs to be vaccinated.
He does.
He's got to get vaccinated.
He does.
He's following the science. I love it.
And I thought we weren't talking about the pandemic.
We're not going to. Well, we're talking about dog vaccinations here. I'm just saying we're talking about veterinarian science. Our puppy just got her kennel cough vaccination, so I'm with you. Oh, good.
Awesome.
It was required. There was a mandate where she was not allowed to go to the daycare for a couple of days when we were gone without her kennel cough shot.
Even dogs have to get it.
Even dogs have to get it.
Even dogs.
All right. That's awesome, Laurie. All right. So we're going to flip the script a little bit here. And we've gotten to know you. So, Laurie, you don't really know me other than this conversation we're having right now. So what would you like to know about me or ask me?
Well, I want to know, first of all, what is the craziest thing that either someone has said or has happened on a podcast?
I immediately go to the funniest thing.
Okay.
And It's dirty. It's a little dirty. It's not too dirty, but with your permission, I will share it.
I can't wait.
Yeah. So a couple months ago, I had Karen Freeland on the podcast. By the way, she's amazing, y'all. She's an author and she has a book, and it's called The Ins and Outs of My Vagina, a penetrating memoir. It's about her kind of sexuality, and it's got like a coming of age. It's her autobiography about, and then like she's a mother. She's not like a crazy person, but it's just about like her sexual experiences as like a teenager into college and everything. And the question that I just asked you about what do you want me to know about you? The first answer I don't remember because it was quite normal. Her second answer, which is probably the funniest answer I got, is she said, "And nobody has ever sent me a dick pic to my phone." And I busted out laughing. I said, Karen's hilarious. You can already tell her sense of humor. And I'm like, Karen, are you saying that because you don't want it or because your ego is bruised that it hasn't happened? She's like, to be clear, most women don't want that, but I would like to know that I'm worth that somebody would do that. It was hilarious. So I don't know about crazy, but it's certainly funny.
That's a great one.
I've had a couple of episodes that I wasn't able to air. I think only 2 in 2 years. But we're ending up season 2 here. So this is amazing. Like perfect timing. I've had a couple episodes where people just want to come on and they want to like take over the conversation in a way that's like completely self-serving. I find that very odd to come on somebody else's show and then like they basically talk about their own agenda the whole time. Like it's almost like they have a shtick, because you and I were having a conversation. They don't really know how to have a conversation. They just have this kind of shtick that it's almost like a stand-up routine or something. That like I find very odd. I find that very odd.
Yeah, like a script. Like they know what they're going to say.
It's kind of like a script, but the thing, and I've had this conversation with another one of my guests, Jenna Kingsley, also hilarious. She's a comedian. She has a really popular podcast called Social Studies. And she's had a couple of quite famous people on her podcast because she's in the comedy circuit. And she's had a couple people that they like come on and they're not really interested in interacting as like a conversation. They kind of have this, it's like a bit that they come onto a podcast and do no matter what is asked of them. Yeah, I find that very odd.
Yeah, it doesn't make for a podcast conversation.
No, it's kind of like, I liken it to not getting political, but we all know that politicians are very good at not answering the question that's asked of them. I was in sales. I did the same thing for many years. So I'm, spot it, you got it. But it's like, I asked you a question and you just answered whatever you were planning to answer that had nothing to do with that question because you want to somehow promote thing or be funny. And I just find that odd. So for me, I've had a couple where I've just had like, I just don't think we can air this as is. I'd like to have you back on if we can have a conversation there. Just some people just can't do it. I find that strange, but these are also people who go on a lot of podcasts. So maybe there's a specific format they're good with. And maybe like this style of format just isn't quite so good for them.
And what do the people do when you tell them we're not going to air that?
They're usually not that happy.
I would imagine.
You're like, this is not going to work. I also have had a guest that was a great guest, and it was her first podcast. I won't say who it was, but if she's listening, she would know, and I'm not going to call her out. And she'd never done a podcast, and she's doing it from her computer, which most of us do it from our computers, but she kept getting a FaceTime call from her mother. So the FaceTime ringtone that comes through your Mac?
Yeah.
So like 4 times during the episode, I'm like, we just have to redo this whole thing. So we actually redid it. It was a really fun episode. But it was funny, and it's totally honest technical mistake. I asked her, I said, hey, I really need you to like turn off your email, your text messaging, all the things that, like media training 101, make sure you're on silent and all these things. And I think she had honestly just forgotten about FaceTime. Yeah. So we're like in the middle of things, doot, 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 that thing. And she's like, so sorry. I'm like, let me pause it. Happened 4 times. But we ended up scrapping that, and we ended up going back and, she was great the second time. So again, nothing about her, I think, is just like a miss or an experience thing, which I'm sure I've done the same thing in my time. I
thought you were going to say that you invited mom to join the podcast.
No, I don't think I don't know that would be the best. It might be entertaining, but I will say, and I've shared this previously, my intention for episode 1, season 3, which comes out in a few weeks, is my wife.
Ooh.
And the inspiration here is that, again, Dax Shepard's first episode, he interviewed Kristen, his wife, Kristen Bell, and they got in a fight on the air. And I listened to that. I'm like, that would be my episode with my wife. We will definitely have some sort of conflict while recording this. And it's hilarious. Like Kristen actually gets mad at Dax on the podcast, and they aired it because it's like, this is our life, that we're not, because if you know anything about them, they have this, persona of like, oh, cute kids, and they do well and everything. And they're like, nah, we're just regular old people trying to survive with our young kids too. And, Kristen's mad at me every day, and it's that I'm like that. And my wife's name is Kirsten. So it's kind of perfect. So we're going to, hopefully for those who want to listen, I will be interviewing my wife. And then later next year, I'm going to have her interview me, which would be the first time I've been fully interviewed on my own show.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And I think she will probably come with a bunch of stuff that'll really troll me, which if you know my wife, she'll probably troll the heck out of me on the air, but I'm here for it. If I can do it for others, I got to do unto others as they would have them do unto me. Right. So.
Oh yeah.
Well, thank you for the question. That was really good. That was a long-winded answer. I hope you got something out of that.
I did. Great answer. And if anyone knows the questions to ask, I think it's going to be your wife.
Yes. For good or for bad.
Yeah.
She'll probably try and pull some compliments out of me for her live on the air, because I've been told that I'm not very good at that, which I would probably have to agree.
Yeah.
Enough about me, Laurie. I'm now on the hot seat.
You sure? Because I can just interview you, Jason, for the rest.
I feel like it's almost like I'm, like in a room, like what is called a deposition or something. I feel like I'm in a deposition right now. That's what it is.
Have I turned my lawyer on?
And Laurie's like, I'm building the case. She's like, I'm going to hand this to your wife.
That's
I love it. I love
it.
But you are definitely you're playing like the good lawyer part. I don't feel like I'm being interrogated in a bad way. It's very friendly, but I know you're still sourcing information from me. I like it.
Good.
I can appreciate
it. Awesome. I haven't lost my touch.
I love it. All right, Laurie, what are you passionate about?
Well, I'll give you kind of the expected answer, which is also the truth, is I am super passionate, obviously, about my kids and my family. Yes. And how amazing it is to watch, I have 2 boys and a girl, and to watch them grow up into these, I have a 16-year-old and 14-year-old twins, and to watch them grow up into these just interesting people, it's pretty cool, the kinds of things that we can share and that we can talk about, and to kind of, definitely not all, happiness all the time. Of course, kids are interesting, and we learn a lot raising them, for sure. But just to kind of watch who they're becoming and how they make their way in the world, the things they're interested in, the things they talk about. I am super passionate about that. To be a little off the beaten path. I happen to love figure skating. It's something I did as a kid. Yeah. And when I bought myself a pair of figure skates for my birthday a few years ago, decided to sign up for some lessons and reinvigorate that. And promptly, I think on my 3rd or 4th lesson, was learning how to do a jump, fell and broke my wrist. So still passionate about it, still love it.
Yep.
But, I kind of think not all things we did when we were kids are things we should necessarily do when we're older.
You're like, I still love figure skating. I don't leave the ice now. I keep my blades on the ice. That's
maybe
funny.
A spin, not a jump.
A spin, not a jump.
One other thing in thinking about this, I think this is a great question. I am kind of passionate and fascinated by performance art. It's kind of random, but I think these people who kind of create art where they are the art. There's a performance artist from many years ago named Chris Burden, and one of his performance art pieces is a video of him having a friend shoot him in the hand.
Wow.
In the
hand?
In the hand.
Did he really shoot him?
He really shot him.
With like a pistol or a rifle?
Yes.
What?
I think it was a pistol. And then the video is the art. I mean, wow. He did a lot of other crazy things, and it just fascinates me. Like, what makes, I think I just think about the psychology, like what makes someone do that? what makes someone think that like, that is what their art and their creativity and their expression is going to be in the world. And I'm just utterly, I don't know if I'm passionate about that, but I'm utterly fascinated by it.
That's fascinating. My thought first went to, for any of you who are interested in doing that sort of art, you might want to go talk to a therapist, first and see what your inner child, what's going on with your inner child work first.
Yes.
And then if you need to have somebody shoot you in the hand, at least you gave the mental wellness stuff a try first, or meditate or something else. That's really, that's intense, Laurie.
Isn't it? I mean, this guy later in life, he married a poet and, I think calmed down a bit. And later in life, his performance art became these huge sculptures that they were so big that he'd have to kind of fly them up like within a helicopter and then drop them.
That's cool.
And that became his performance art. So he stopped having himself shot. But it's just one of those kind of random things that strikes my interest.
Yeah. Talk about suffering for your art.
Talk about it, right?
Jeez.
We're going to take a different path towards creativity, right?
I think so. Yeah. Like kids, no, this is not something mom and dad support.
Right. Right.
So Laurie, what's something you're afraid might actually be true about you?
I like to think of myself as kind of an empathetic person, a kind person, as someone who's approachable and open. And yet I think all of those years of lawyer training make me sometimes not as approachable as maybe I would like to be. And what's interesting is that I tend to hear that kind of from my family, my kids. You talked about you felt like you were in a deposition. I think sometimes I launch into cross-examination without realizing it. And that, that's great for the courtroom. Not really good, I think, when you're raising kids and you want to be, maybe when they're getting in trouble and you want to get to the truth of something, then that cross-examination comes in handy. But I do watch myself with that. And I do get a little afraid that sometimes the way that I perceive I'm coming across is not necessarily how other people are seeing it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is highly likely for every single one of us. I think that's just a foregone conclusion. I forget what they said is, like the old marketing concept that like, we're just not going to be for everybody, no matter how likable you are to like some people's personalities or the way people speak or the things that they talk about or they care about. We're just not going to be everybody else's person. And that once you can accept that, then it's just much better. That's what I hear there.
That, though, I think
it is hard to accept, right? Because like we want to be liked,
right?
Of course,
right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Especially when you create a podcast, so you can like hear yourself talk all the time. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've heard it. Anyway.
I like you, Jason. I like you a lot.
Heard from a friend. Yeah, just get all the nice warm compliments here.
Yeah,
thank you, Laurie.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to start to wrap up here. I want to ask you kind of the big old philosophy question, which is really funny. I want to take it back to a question you asked about the podcast. Anybody weird or anything? The question is, how do you see the world? And I had somebody answer this quite literally, and I couldn't, but it wasn't like they were being sarcastic or funny. I was like, really? Are you that literal? So I think you probably know what I'm actually asking with this question. So Laurie, how do you see the world?
Oh, I see the world as full of possibility and adventure if we are willing to be open and take the chances to reach out and grab that and do it.
Yeah, that's so cool. Do you find as a parent of not so young humans anymore, like humans that are like real humans in the world, do you find that that's been instilled in them? Do you see the similarity in them?
I think as parents, we want to instill certain things, and, it's hard to tell in the teenager phase because I
too many hormones.
Like too many
hormones.
There's hormones. There's, that's the time of life that, the friends are important and you are not, except if they need you to drive them somewhere or pay for something.
Yeah, of course.
I think it was maybe Mark Twain who said, it was something about his father. My father didn't know a whole lot when I was 18. It was amazing how much he'd learned by the time I was 25.
Yeah, perfect. I love
something
that.
like that. I may have butchered that, but something like that.
No, it sounds about right.
I think that this kind of upcoming generation, I don't know if they're Gen Z maybe, or even beyond that, they look at the world in a really, they have a really wide view of it. They have a really open view of an inclusive view. And I'm always so impressed. That's
so cool.
Yeah, when I talk to my kids at how that kind of inclusivity has just been, it's not even anything that I think they're necessarily taught. I think it's a way that in their generation, they just react and act with each other. And that they can kind of be themselves and be comfortable being themselves. And I think that opens them up to a lot of possibility.
Yeah, that's awesome, Laurie.
Yeah.
All right. So how can we all connect with you, find you, figure out more about what you do, get some book recommendations from you, all the things? We know you're a very multi-talented person.
Oh, yeah.
Give, maybe some free or paid advice on why you should or should not go to law school. I'm kidding. Half kidding. Half kidding about that. Yeah. How can the audience connect with you?
Okay. Well, what I do with Tribeca Blue Consulting, named for one of my favorite neighborhoods in New York, which I'm sure you know, Jason, as you live near there too.
I live there.
Yeah. What I do is help people present themselves and their stories better. Whether it is in the courtroom as a trial lawyer, whether it's in the boardroom as a business person, or whether it's in the media going on TV or podcasts like this one. Mm-hmm. So I do one-on-one coaching and I do training, and people can find me if they are interested in learning more on my website. It's tribecablueconsulting.com. And just sign up for a complimentary consultation. I'd love to chat with anyone. And I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. That's pretty much where you can find me. So just mention this podcast, ask for books, ask about law school, ask anything. I'd love to connect.
Yeah, you can tell that Laurie would be happy to connect with you. You're such a people person. I love it. I'm sensing the energy through the screen and the podcast.
Thank you.
All right, Laurie, thank you so much for being on. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you. And like we said at the beginning, Laurie and I don't know each other, but we do now, which is to me is my favorite part of this show, is I get to know people live and have everybody listening get to hear our conversation as well. So Laurie, last thing for you as a communications expert, this should be a piece of cake for you. And I say that because this is not easy for all my guests. Love if you would leave us with some words to wisdom. And these words of wisdom need to get on a Post-it note. For those who are young, that's a little piece of paper that sticks to stuff. Or if you're younger and you don't know what that means, an Instagram post, not the text underneath, just the post. So a meme. So Laurie, what do you have for us?
Okay. Well, Jason, I'm actually going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes. And here it is. This is from Howard Thurman, who was an educator. And he said, and you could fit this on a Post-it, just write small. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go and do that, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm going to remember that. That's such good advice, because that's kind of counter a lot to people are starting businesses. What does the market need? But if you do the thing you love, the market is 7 billion people. The market is massive for almost anything you can come up with in this day and age. So I love that, Laurie.
Oh, thank you. I think it applies to business. It applies to personal. It's just a really great way of thinking about how you want to live your life.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for being on. We're wrapping up 2021, as we talked about. Best holiday wishes to you all. I hope that when we have you back on the show here again soon, that you will have some reports on how it went with the camping trips, free soloing, free climbing some things. You'll come back and be like, I had a breakthrough, and like I've hunted some deer and like all the Colorado things. I'm loving it. I can't wait to see the breakthroughs.
I can't wait to come back and tell you all about it. Until then, I'll just be watching Free Solo and every other mountain climbing documentary on TV from the comfort of my couch.
I'm with you. Like, I am an outdoors person. The idea of rock climbing in any way, stretch of the imagination, let alone doing it with no safety harness, makes me just a hard no.
Right.
Just a hard no. That dude is insane. All right, Laurie, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. It's been a blast.
Take care, Laurie.
Bye.
Goodbye. All right.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and give us a shout out or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.